who just needs meetings to move along and not get sidetracked.
I asked some questions regarding.
I mean, if you're really doing it as like a check-in type of thing, then the important thing is to set your overall time limit and have a clear purpose and agenda. Like, we're not here to get into the weeds on anybody's issues. You're going to tell me
She said
if, you know, you're green, you're yellow, and you're red, and what's causing you to be
we were sitting down there, and I said, you and I are going to disagree on that. And I feel like we're in trouble.
Okay, that might be something that we can.
I don't even know. Does that still exist?
We changed the meeting.
There you go.
Is an hour and a half. I had suggested it.
That's a scary thing.
I'm telling you, I think we can get it done in an hour, and I think that doing it longer actually might be creating some of these side conversations and feeling like you have enough time to chit chat. So,
when you have some time one afternoon, I'd like to meet with you.
I'm home by 3:30.
Okay.
You just tell me the day, and they throw meetings at us all the time. So.
I said he has 10 minutes.
Well, maybe one day next week. You're on spring break this week, but not next week.
all right. So you want to go ahead and get
Back to work
started?
on Monday.
Yeah, and I don't take spring break because I don't have kids at home, so that doesn't
I suppose
affect
there are.
me.
It is busy.
Well,
it might be hard for her to
I've
find
got
parking
college
spots.
classes all this week anyway, so.
Or she saw somebody in the parking lot she wanted to chat with.
Jake is about 5 minutes.
Kevin, back in here. Back in here.
I by accident almost parked in Jill's spot. Jill, what? I by accident almost parked in your spot.
Oh, somebody else was parked there. Yeah. So I'm down way at the end, and I almost had to run Kathy over because her and Ma and Pa were standing in the driveway. So, like, y'all can't stand in the driveway.
See, I guess
I would say yeah, I think we're just gonna have to go.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. We're calling the meeting to order. Let the roll call show that we are currently missing one board member, Mrs. Rutkowski. Hopefully she's on her way. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I will go ahead and move that we approve the agenda as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. We have so many people to choose from. Dr. Barnard, do you want to call on somebody to lead the pledge?
I'll call on Mrs. Reichler. You don't have to come. You can actually just.
You could stay right there.
But I like being there.
But I like, yeah, exactly, the initiative.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda, we have approval of minutes for February 9th, 2022 business meeting, the February 23rd, 2022 work study session, and the special board meeting for the executive session on March 2nd, 2022. Does anybody have any questions or comments before the minutes before we move for their approval? Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes from February 9th, February 23rd, and March 2nd, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now proceed on to informational reports, starting with a summary of current events from Interim Superintendent Dr. Sweeney.
Madam President, members of the governing board, and guests, I want to forewarn you, I'm deliberately keeping these introductory comments short because as I looked at my 6 pages of notes on our action and discussion items tonight, you're going to be hearing a lot of me, so you don't need to hear a whole lot from me now. But first thing I just wanted to talk about is it is that time of year and we start spending more time looking at next year than we have in the past. And to that end, there's been events going on across the district as we prepare for kids to move up grade levels and to move from site to site. The high school hosted the Moving Up Day back in mid-February, and then they had a 8th grade parent night on February 24th, followed by 8th grade registration between the 25th and the 28th. And current high school students are wrapping up their registration this week for next year, so I think that will all be done by Friday is the plan. Last week, McDowell Mountain hosted its kindergarten roundup on 2 different days. And last evening, Fountain Hills Middle School hosted parents of current 3rd graders to facilitate the transition to 4th grade next year at the middle school. Last night, those parents were able to meet with the 4th grade teachers, Mrs. Reichler included, as well as with Mr. Markle, and they got a good overview of what goes on both in the classroom and throughout the school and opportunities that are there for kids. I want to thank all the teachers, principals, administrative support staff who put that extra time into those events that require planning, preparation, and then actually execution of those. So thank you all for taking care of that. As I'm sure the students are aware, we're heading into spring break after Friday. And tomorrow are half days for students in grades kindergarten through 8th grade. And there are parent conferences being held. Middle school conferences are Thursday from 3 to 7 and Friday from 1 to 3. And at McDowell Mountain, conferences are being held Thursday 1 to 6 and Friday 1 to 3. Board members, I know you received an email from Mrs. Andre about some supplemental reading materials. And those are on display over here. These are supplemental reading materials for grades 4 through 6. They will officially be available for viewing tomorrow, even though they were out all day today. And that is consistent with board policy IJJ. There are 12 books, age appropriate, grade appropriate, different lexile levels, and those will be out for 60 days for anybody who wishes to come look at those and review them. Final comment, I want to wish Mr. Starr a happy birthday. It's his birthday tonight, and rumor has it that it's Mrs. Jenkins' birthday tomorrow, so it's birthday time for the governing board.
Happy birthday.
But sincere best wishes to both of you. Thank you.
Turn a little red there, Dana.
All right, now we will proceed to informational reports or updates from the governing board members, starting with you, Mr. Sarr.
I'll pass.
Okay. Mrs. Reed.
So I attended the boys basketball game in Prescott, and then I attended it at the Phoenix Memorial Coliseum, and I just want you all to know you played really hard, really well, and I don't go to many basketball games, so I was really proud of our Falcons being up there. And then I attended the PTO Gala. Congratulations to the PTO President Jelaine and her board. There's Jelaine. You did a great job. I know what a hard task that is. I did it for many years, so I don't envy you, but you did a great job, and I saw that you guys made a lot of money, which comes right back into our school district, so congratulations on that. I attended the consolidation meeting yesterday, and that went well. It was well attended. We got a tour of McDowell Mountain to hear all the things that unfortunately need fixed there, so I did that, and I attended the essay luncheon that the coalition put on, and congratulations to Andy Lloyd. What an amazing essay, but all of our kids did an amazing job. There were 19 winners, 2 tied for 3rd, 1 second place, and 1 first place, and we've got some amazing Falcons. So, great job.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Mrs. Rutkowski.
All of the minutes to the meeting that Krista wanted read, I read every single one of those dates.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Barnard.
Yes, I went to the essay contest last week as well, and Andy Lloyd's essay was amazing. It's in the newspaper if anyone would like to read it. The newspaper also did a really nice job highlighting our Falcons. And I went to the basketball games. You guys are the best. And no one's going to cry. It's going to be great. I read the minutes too.
Thank you. As for myself, I'm working on catching up on some ASBA webinars, and they had finished publishing their kind of budget 101 materials that I want to download and reach out to ASBA and find out what we can utilize ourselves and share out as kind of informational items to the general public, because there is a lot of good information in there about school finance and what all the codes mean and why we have to, put things in this budget category versus that budget category, that really helps explain, not super layman's terms, but not very like you have to have a degree in school finance to completely understand it. So I think it would be beneficial if we can share that to our community so they can have a better understanding. All right, moving on to reports, starting with Stugo. Do we have any Stugo representatives tonight? Yeah, come on.
Double duty.
How's it going? Just a few things I have. The hoop coming dance was a good success. It was very fun and safe event for everybody. And we had a large turnout of the student body. We showed the prom advertisement at lunch today, and we had like 50 to 60 kids show up, and we served pizza, and we watched the advertisement, and it was pretty fun. We had a Kahoot at the end, and we gave away 2 discounted tickets and 1 free ticket for prom, which is April 30th. Tickets are $70, and it's at the Legacy Ballroom in Paradise Valley. Stugo's entire focus right now is mainly on prom, just because it's such a big event coming up. That's about it, though. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our honor athletes for basketball and wrestling. Superintendent Sweeney, do you have anything to share with us or comments to make before we pass out certificates?
I will just say congratulations to both teams. I know you both went a long way this year. I had the pleasure of coming to the game when you played Chinle here, and it was good basketball. It was fast, it was quick, good defense. I enjoyed it immensely, so congratulations on your success. I do want to mention Mitchell. I don't want to put you on the spot, but your second grade teacher, Mitchell here?
Oh, no.
Well, his second grade teacher has been following him closely, and Mrs. Ashley, and she can't believe that he's as tall and as good as he is. So pass that along to him if you would. And Coach Salzman, great job with your guys. I know you put a lot of people into the state tournament, and all of you represented us well. So congratulations.
How do we want to do this? Do we all want to go down and, like, we have all these certificates? How do we
Well,
want
we
to?
have one group come. Evelyn, do you want to lead the affairs? Come on up.
Come on up. Miss Wynn?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us. I'm beyond proud to stand in front of you again, another season presenting state athletes to you. I'm glad, we have this tradition. It's nice to honor our athletes in a really public way. Can we bring them closer?
Yes.
Don't leave me hanging up here.
Basketball first? Okay.
So I'm just going to start with words from Coach Bonner. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it tonight. He did have a middle school game, so he's off coaching our future boys who will be in front of you someday. And then we'll pass it off to Coach Leslie.
Why don't you guys line up facing that way, right?
Can I take a picture?
Well, we gotta take the picture up from the other side.
That way. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so Coach Bonner says he wishes he could be here with everyone tonight to say in person how much he appreciates everyone for their continued support. We had an awesome season, falling just short of our goals of being state champions and in the semifinals, but accomplishing a 20-plus win season for the first time in the last 4 years here at Fountain Hills High School. The boys on our coaching staff have had a lot of fun throughout this season and look forward to a lot more success in the future. We have 5 seniors leaving us this year, and we will truly miss every one of them. For the returners, we will have big shoes to fill, but with the leadership from our seniors this year, I believe the guys will be ready to go, and I'm excited for the off-season and the season to come. Thank you all again, and I hope you have a great evening.
Yeah, there's so many cameras, guys.
That's where you gotta find the tallest kid, like right here.
Yes, you got it.
That's right, squeeze in, boys, so we're not in the picture. Come on, keep going.
This is about you,
There
not
you
about
go.
us.
None of us wanna be in the newspaper.
I'll get out here with.
And you're all tall enough to hide us.
We have more.
Oh,
Well, no, Evelyn has them.
Yeah,
Okay,
she has them.
do you wanna just file and pass them down? Grab yours and pass them down.
We need to present them.
Yeah, say their names. Yeah, if we knew their names and all that. That would be right.
Yeah, we have it in the
I
board
know, I'm
packet.
trying to get to the page.
I know.
Go for it. Wendy.
17.
Okay, you want me to? Go ahead, no, you do,
Okay.
you're president.
I know, don't you just know them all?
Go ahead.
All right, from the basketball team, we have Jaden Mitchell, Jared Reichler, Xavier Mick, Alex, Rick, Diesel Geiger, Luke Bladell, Aiden Logan, Ty Cosman, Mitch Perkins, Keaton Ort, Casey Osborne, and Jake Burnett.
Okay, one more, hold on. Present the certificates proud. Good, there we go. Awesome.
Nice job.
Congratulations, great job.
Okay, and then we also had an amazing wrestling season. We took a couple kids to states. We came home with a state medal, so I'm gonna let Coach Salzman speak on his wrestlers.
Hey, first of all, great job basketball team, awesome kids, awesome job, a lot of fun to watch. Here are our state qualifiers for wrestling. This year we qualified 9 out of our 13. We had a really big team this year. We had 27, which is easily probably one of the biggest teams in our division. Makes it fun, competitive. You know, if a guy gets injured or sick, there was another one to step in their place. These guys bonded really well, and it was a really fun year to have them on the team. You have a.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry, we're hiding
We're
from
hiding from the
pictures.
camera.
We don't need to be in the background.
Rylan Schmidt, Tyler Flynn. Real quickly, Tyler Flynn placed 4th in the state at 132. So as a sophomore, he took 4th out of about 52 schools. So a lot of potential in the future. Stephen Brodsky. Tyler Lang. JT Spain. Lucas Phillips. Ty Jablonski. Travis Stefani. Here's our state qualifiers.
Okay, hold them
Still
a
taking
little bit higher
pictures?
so they're not being seen. There you go. Awesome. Okay, thanks guys.
Thank you, congratulations.
Good job, guys.
Thank you, Fountain Hills athletes, for all of your efforts. You are welcome to leave. You do not need to stay for the rest of the meeting. Continuing on with informational reports, in our board packet, we have site council minutes, pages 18 to 26. Student activity and auxiliary accounts are on pages 27 through 34. The unaudited financial report is pages 35 and 36, and then the current enrollment and withdrawal numbers are on page 37. Are there any questions or comments regarding any of these reports?
I will say no for me.
Yeah, I don't have any questions or comments either. Anybody else?
No.
So we're good to go with the informational reports. Let me get back to my main agenda page. Next, we have public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening, Krista? Okay. Then we proceed on to the consent agenda, which includes donations on page 39, accounts payable vouchers, pages 40 through 55, payroll vouchers, pages 56 through 64, and then the personnel action report, which is on page 65. Any questions? Yes, go ahead, Mrs. Reed.
I would just like to make a comment that on the personnel report, Mrs. Mail is retiring, not resigning. So there's a big difference. So we would like to congratulate her on her retirement, but I wanted to make a note so that that's reflected in the minutes, please.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I will go ahead and move then that we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The first action item on our agenda this evening is a request for proposal for fire alarm installation at FHMS. We do have an addendum to our board packet with additional information regarding that. Superintendent Sweeney, do you have an intro for us on this topic?
I do. Madam President, members of the governing board and guests, this item is requesting approval for the district to issue an RFP to solicit bids for the installation of a new fire alarm system at the middle school. Though we have a commitment from the school's facilities board to cover approximately half of this cost, the Auditor General's office requires us to go out for competitive bids because we do expect this to just cross that threshold of $100,000 total. I recommend approval of this. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I do know that the notice of this is ready to go pending your approval, and we will have it out tomorrow.
Any comments or discussion? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve, or that we give authorization to administration to issue a RFP for the fire system and installation at the middle school.
I will second. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion on the table, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Our next action item is a date change for the student trip to Greece. There's information on our packet starting on page 67. I know that we have Mr. Salzman in the audience. Superintendent Sweeney, were you intending to give any kind of intro and background, or are we just having Mr. Salzman come up?
I have some comments.
Okay.
Madam President, members of the governing board and guests, this item requests your approval of a change in the dates for this trip that was previously approved by the board for March 12th through March 21st. They necessarily had to change those dates, and if approved, it would take place from June 1st through June 10th. I recommend approval, and I know Mr. Saltzman is here. If you have any questions between us, I'm sure we can answer them.
Any other questions or comments from the board? I don't have any either. I will go ahead and move that we approve the date change for the FHHS trip to Greece. The new planned dates being June 1st, 2022 through June 10th, 2022.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The motion carries. Next action item, approval of district-wide fundraising list under policy JJE on page 70 of our board packet. Do you have some additional information for us, Superintendent Sweeney?
Madam President, members of the good board and guests, consistent with governing board policy JJE, this item requests approval of the clubs listed in the supporting documents to fundraise throughout the upcoming year per the guidelines set out in policy JJE. I recommend approval, and if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
I think my only question is, I'm just reading a little bit more closely the recommendation. So the recommendation is that we approve the following clubs/activities to fundraise pursuant to the policy. Obviously, this just lists the current clubs and organizations. So I presume that if we approve any new clubs to be created, we would also then want to, like, if they intended to fundraise, we would have to pass another motion in the future to allow them to fundraise, so.
The process for approval of the clubs is spelled out in board policy, and the clubs themselves can be approved at the site level or through me. The purpose for this is to clarify that school-sanctioned clubs are able to do fundraising events. Sometimes we haven't had this occur in recent times, I don't know, but a group might decide they want to go do some fundraising. And the policy is very clear that it has to be approved school clubs that do that. So the list that you have in front of you, Mrs. Andre reached out to the sites and got a list of those clubs that are in existence right now and would qualify under this for approval.
So do we want to have our motion specifically say that we approve the following clubs, or do we want it to be a little more general, just saying that we authorize clubs to be able to fundraise? I'm just trying to figure out if we want to set ourselves up where if a new club comes up later, we need to pass another motion.
We could certainly do it as school-approved clubs.
Yeah.
And actually, I have a question.
Go right ahead.
So, to Nadia's point, like McDowell Mountain lists the Falcon leaders, but it's not listed at the middle school or the high school, but there's been Falcon leader clubs at both of the schools. And then there's no student council or NJHS on the middle school, but they have those clubs, like they have those organizations there. So why aren't those listed?
We were not given those as identified clubs.
Well, now we are.
So then to Nadia's point, if we only approve the following clubs, does that eliminate those clubs from fundraising?
We would probably be best served to approve school-approved clubs.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, hold on, if we're really getting in the weeds. I mean, it should be school-approved clubs under the direction of a school leader. We certainly don't want to be sending, we don't want to be sending elementary school kids with candy bars down to the park. I mean, obviously there needs to be some discretion of a person at each site. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
The language for approval of clubs at the site include that there's an adult sponsor,
okay.
staff member that sponsors that.
Okay. That also needs to be with them while they fundraise. I mean, no, we can't, because then that gets really tricky.
To address that question, we will be bringing another list of approved fundraising activities.
Okay.
And the two of those go together, that like door-to-door sales will not be on that list. And so that is a next step in this.
Well, I hope car washes are on that list. The football team is having a car wash in 2 weeks.
My car has to always be washed, going to the barn with Spond.
No, I think that school, I like that. Thank you for catching that. I like that the school, clubs that are approved at the school level also have the ability to do this, so that we don't get into having extra things and people getting confused.
All right, I will go ahead and move that the board approve the motion that school-approved clubs and activities be allowed to fundraise pursuant to policy JJE.
I second.
unless you wanted a second.
I know, you need to turn off your mic though, you can't talk.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion on the table, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Our next action item is approval of professional and support staff meet and confer agreements, which were sent to us as an addendum this afternoon. Superintendent Sweeney, do you have additional commentary for us on this as an introduction?
Yes, Madam President, members of the governing board and guests. As you are aware, we have an accelerated schedule to engage with representatives from both certified and support staff employee groups as part of this meet and confer process. And these groups reviewed, discussed, and revised respective meet and confer agreements. I think in about a 6-week time period, we went from beginning to sitting here tonight, and that would not have happened without the work that a lot of people put into this. So I want to acknowledge and thank the support staff representatives who were part of this process. That includes Krista, Karen Popowitz, Annalie Evans, Carmen Sepulveda, Kim Flowers, Jennifer Hamilton, and Christina DeWitt. On the certified staff, and these were separate groups, separate meetings, but certified members included Jill Cooper, Richa Perkins, Laura Heron, and TJ Buckley. The principals all joined the certified meet and confer process, as did our finance director, Catherine King, back there. Chris was a part of that throughout, and Krista not only was a member of the support team, she then had to ride roughshod over us on the certified side to make sure that she was keeping track of all of the doings. And so I sincerely want to thank everybody for taking part in that. You have been provided copies of these revised agreements, and that is thanks to the diligent work of Krista over here. You can see the format of it. The strike-throughs are language that we are proposing to be eliminated, and the red text indicates new or revised language. There's quite a bit there. I do wish we would have had it to you earlier, but in both cases we were going, with certified, we were going until Monday of this week before we had everything wrapped up. I do want to point out on, there is one piece that on the classified, support staff side, that what I would request tonight is approval with a little bit of legal room for us, and that is the reimbursement, I believe. It's on page 5 of the support staff document under the general leave reimbursement of support staff heading. Okay, and there's one section that's highlighted in yellow, and that says general leave reimbursement is paid at the rate of $8 per hour. Unresolved is the group has requested a significantly higher number than that. I certainly support raising that number. The question that Catherine King and I need to work through is, you know, what's that translate to in the total dollars and cents based on the amount of accumulated leave that is there.
Okay.
So my request would be approval of both of these documents, with that being something we will still change. It's not going to be outrageous and crazy. It's just going to be a higher number than what you're seeing there, and we'd like to proceed forward with that.
I have a question. Yes. So under that same heading, I noticed that you have numbers in red. So are we changing the 7 years of continuous service to 5 years?
Yes, the proposed change on those would be that currently you don't qualify for any reimbursement until 7 years.
Right.
And so it would be to change, as you see indicated there, that employees after 5 years of service would be eligible to get compensation for 25% of the leave that they've accumulated.
Okay, and so then in the little section right under where it says general leave reimbursement for support staff, that will need to change then, because right now it still says with at least 7 continuous years of service. It's the little paragraph right under the title.
Mm-hmm. Generally, reimbursements under that.
Thank you, good catch.
Any additional questions or comments regarding the documents?
Just,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Sarver.
are we gonna get the final copies in at some point?
Pending approval this evening, Mrs. Andre will be doing the final things without the strike-throughs and without the colored letters, and we'll get you updated copies.
Thank you.
And then when do we, because we'll approve this, but it's not final because there's the piece that's still being finalized that you just notified us about, right? So do you have an anticipated date for the final copy to come before us?
I expect we'll resolve that at the beginning of next week, Monday or Tuesday. And that's just a question we need to have.
So should we make our motion to approve them with the caveat that there is a pending item to be finalized regarding the general leave?
I would, and I would request that you have confidence in us to land on a number that's good for employees and sound for the district.
Do we have a motion?
I move that, we approve the meet and confer agreement for the professional and support staff with the caveat that Dr. Sweeney and the committee come to a resolution on the general leave reimbursement dollar amount.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you again for everybody involved for all the hard work on this. Following that, our next action item is approval of site level administrators for 2022-2023. That list is on page 72 and 73. Sorry, Dr. Sweeney, do you have any comments for us on this item?
Madam President, members of the governing board, yes. If approved, this item will authorize us to issue contracts to site level administrators. You've been provided a list of our current site administrators, and it's our intent to offer contracts to all of them for next year. I recommend approval, and if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Any questions from anyone? I will go ahead and move that we authorize administration to issue contracts to the site level administrators for 2022-2023 as listed in our board packet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition, that motion passes. Our next item is then approval of certified teaching staff for 2022-2023. That list begins on page 74 and goes through page 77. Superintendent Sweeney, any comments?
Just that, again, I recommend approval, and if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
I have a question.
Yes, Mrs. Reed.
When will the contracts be issued and when will they be due back?
Mrs. Reed and fellow governing board members, I was going to address that when we get to talking about contracts in the next section, but we'll get to it now. I believe we will be able to get them out the first week when we come back from break, approximately the 21st or 22nd.
Yep.
Alex is beginning the process of working on those, but we're not going to be able to get them out before Friday, so we'll wait and have them ready to go on Monday or Tuesday.
And then they have 15 days to sign them?
Correct.
Is that 15 calendar days or
15 calendar days,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or discussion? Do we have a motion?
I move the board authorize administration to issue teacher contracts for 22-23.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. And our last action item here is approval of site level / warehouse / transportation support staff for 22-23. That begins on page 78 and goes through page 80. Superintendent Sweeney?
Madam President, members of the governing board and guests, this item, if approved, will authorize us to issue contracts and work agreements to the site level warehouse and transportation support staff as listed in the supporting documents. I do recommend approval and would love to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions or comments? Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we authorize administration to issue contracts, work agreements to site level warehouse transportation staff for 2022-2023.
Second.
We have the motion and the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move on to information and discussion items, beginning with a update on tax credits. And I do believe that is with you, Dr. Sweeney.
Madam President, members of the governing board and guests, I am well aware there have been some questions and challenges related to the public school tax credit. And I hope we can use this time tonight to clear up some of that confusion related to its use. This is bound in statute, and it is ASRS 43-1089.01. And this statute defines what the tax credit can be used for, and some of these uses include CTE industry certification, assessments, standardized testing fees for college credit or readiness such as ACT or SAT, character education program, and extracurricular activities. Through the years, we have certainly seen most of those contributions come in here to fund student activities and to pay fees associated with extracurricular activities. I believe this is the area where most of the confusion has reigned, and so that's where I'm going to spend the bulk of my time here this evening. So also in statute, extracurricular activities are defined as school-sponsored activities that may require enrolled students to pay a fee in order to participate. And this has not changed for several years. There's nothing new here. And those fees can be used to pay individual student fees for such activities. This includes athletic fees, field trips, band uniforms, etc. What seems to have contributed to the previous shifts and some of the uncertainty in FHUSD away from these uses to pay individual fees for individual activities was really something that occurred during the pandemic, and it was not unique to Fountain Hills Unified School District, where there were a multitude of requests for refunds of tax credit fees because some event or an activity did not take place. So the first thing that we all need to do a better job on communicating is tax fund contributions are non-refundable. And they're non-refundable because once you make your contribution and you file your taxes, you've received the benefit of that on your taxes. You may not have received the immediate reward that you thought you were contributing towards, but you have received the tax benefit that goes with it. We need to, do, as I say, do collectively a better job of communicating that, and that includes on the forms that we use and in meetings, conversations, and other things when people are soliciting these. Also, if a contribution is for a specific student, and whether due to cancellation of the activity, an injury that person might have, or the need to be uprooted and move across the country, for example, a refund cannot be issued for that, and the contribution can be transferred if they're staying in our schools, and but it requires a specific act by the contributor to transfer that fee. And by that I mean, I'm going to just use an athletic example. If a parent this spring contributes to pay their student's sports fee for softball, and for whatever reason the student is unable to participate, that parent needs to communicate with Mrs. Wynn to request that the fee be used to pay next fall's volleyball fee. We can physically move that from one account to another if we are directed by the contributor to do that. What has happened in a number of cases where maybe activities were canceled or for whatever reason people weren't able to participate. That fee is contributed to a particular account, and then there's no additional communication back about moving that fee. And by statute, it's locked up there, and it's locked up there for 2 years in that account before it can then be moved to the general tax credit fees. So again, that's just another thing. We need to do a better job of communicating and work on our internal processes, so we're sure that we're getting those funds where they need to be. Another issue that has created confusion, and this has been from those of us within the district soliciting tax credits and from those people making tax credit contributions. The law is specific to it is individuals and married couples who can contribute. And the limit hasn't changed. It's $200 for individuals, $400 for married couples, and it's per year. We have seen I will use quotation marks, tax credit contributions come in from businesses, trusts, LLCs, and about every sort of legal entity you can think of. You cannot have a tax credit from one of those entities. It has to be an individual or a married couple who is making that contribution. So that's just another thing we can do a better job of communicating in-house that I as recently as last week saw a check come in from an LLC, and it was solicited by a group trying to raise the money, and that's great. We want people to be enthusiastic about raising it and people to donate, but we can't take that as a tax credit donation, and we can't issue a receipt for a tax credit for that.
We can take it as a donation.
You can take it as a donation. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
It can be written off on your taxes.
Yeah.
It's just not a 100% credit.
Exactly. And now, none of that has changed.
Right.
So it's just a matter of rebuilding awareness in what tax credit is and what it isn't. But in summary, individuals and married couples can use the public school tax credit to pay for individual fees associated with extracurricular activities. We've had conversations here just last week, and we'll continue to have them so that everybody is aware of that reality. People choosing to make a tax credit donation can do so by check or money order, or they can pay online using the RevTrack system. And when they use the RevTrack system, it gets a little clunkier again. And so my advice to everyone, if you want to keep it simple and make sure it's getting where you want it to go, write a check with a little note that says this is for Tom Smith, whatever.
And you want the tax credit.
Yeah. If they use the RevTrack system, they can do that, but there is then a comment box in there that they need to put specific intent of the contribution, such as high school basketball fee for Patrick Sweeney. Clear, it's all they need to know. There's a little delay between that going through our business offices and notification getting to Mrs. Wynn, but it will get there. And that is a necessary piece of that. Individuals and married couples can also contribute to any of the 3 schools or the district's general tax credit fund, again, either by check, money order, or RevTrack. When contributed to the general tax credit fund, that allows the school to use that money in any way that they think is the best use, approved by the school site council, provided that those uses are within the statutory guidelines that are there. So, if in doubt, and you want to take advantage of the tax credit, which truthfully every taxpayer in the state of Arizona ought to do, whether they're doing it with us or another public school, if in doubt, just contribute to the general tax credit fund, and those site councils and principals have discussions about where can we best use some money to help the fees for that particular area. So that's it in a nutshell. And if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them. But I think we've clarified in-house what we're doing here.
We probably have the same
We have the same
questions, so
questions.
go ahead.
I'll start and piggyback right off.
Sounds good.
So I am hopeful that you're putting all this in writing for our Falcon Focus, because it's great that we all know, but we need people in our community to be aware of this.
Dr. Barnard, I thank you. My Falcon Focus is now done.
This
considered that coming in tonight, but that's a good topic, and yes, it's in writing, and so.
As long as it's done before April 15th, we can still collect tax credits from last year, so you still have plenty of weeks to do that.
And I will say, I think that that is a sort of a recent law, is that you can go up until April 15th.
That's correct.
So I do think we need to get this out to the public. I think that's very important. And then also just that it's tied to a student. That's always confusing to me. And then the reason we started to go down this path was because so many people, like you said, asked for refunds. And we just have to be really clear that if something's canceled, if something, whatever, we have another pandemic, or we cannot refund that money, because you're right, and I don't think people understand, like, you write $200 on your taxes, you get that $200 back. So in any case, so we have a bunch of money in EarthQuest. Sam Barnard has money in there. That was Catalina Island. Not Catalina Island. This one was
Astrocamp.
Astrocamp. So as the 2 years coming up, I think that, it's $15,000 in that account. And at this point, any parent of a 7th grader, that child is now a 9th grader, if they haven't asked for it back, I don't think they're going to be asking for it back. So what do we do with all this money? And that's my question. Sorry.
A quick answer to what do we do with all this money is one of the things that also we've begun having discussions about is ideally we should be able to fund our extracurriculars, athletics, clubs, etc., out of tax credit monies and not be using any M&O monies for these activities. And that includes paying the stipends if it's a club, or coaching fees, transportation costs, all of those things associated with it. As principals work with their people who are sponsoring those clubs, or coaches, and with the athletic director, there are some things that will self-fund. For example, pretty good chance Luke's wrestling team with 27 members paying a fee, pretty close to self-funding. Wouldn't have to do a whole lot on top of that, maybe a little, but some. But then there are a number of things that are never going to self-fund and qualify for tax credit. For example, if you do a homework club, you're charging a student $1 or $2 or $3 or something, and you have to charge a fee in order for it to be considered tax credit eligible. But you're not going to pay the stipend of the person who's managing that. And so those are then decisions that the principals need to make, working with their site council and everybody involved. Like, if we have an extra $15,000 in our general tax credit fund, and we need $2,000 of it to fund this activity, that's a great use of that fund. And there are a number of things. Academic decathlon is never going to be a self-funding enterprise. So, there's a number of things that come up that are good uses for that money, that if it's in the school account, then they can make those decisions in consultation with their school councils, site councils, about what they're going to do with it. The other thing I didn't list in here, but it's an important consideration of this, is the tax credit funds can also be used for capital needs. Pretty much everything that falls in that category, about 5 years ago, they changed that so that you can use it for capital needs. So if there's money in any account that surpassed, it's been on hold for 2 years, and it hasn't been redirected somewhere else and goes into a general fund, then we can look at those things of how can they use it to fund other activities on their campus that may not be self-funding, and how can we use it to fill capital needs. So the money will be put to good use. None of it will go to waste, but it does create, when that has to sit there for 2 years, it does create some large account balances that are really unable to be used if it's designated to an individual.
Exactly.
So I have a question. So when you were talking about being able to transfer it, that the person who wrote the check can transfer it, is there an expiration on that? Let's just say, my kid signed up for basketball in the winter of 2021, gets hurt, can't play. So, but should be ready for baseball season in the spring of 2022. Can that money transfer from one year to another, or does it have to stay in that same calendar year or the school's fiscal year?
It can transfer across years, but for your tax credit purposes,
Right.
it's the time you gave it.
Yeah, no, I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But based on COVID, the whole spring season for baseball, volleyball, golf got canceled. And there was some discrepancies as to whether those kids then could use that money for their fall sports, once sports picked back up.
I would say so that we don't have to hire forensic
Right.
analysts and a whole new team of accountants, that we don't try to go retroactive on
No.
that,
But I'm just, I guess my point is that if we have this situation in the future, we need to know how it needs to be handled, because we're not gonna be retroactive. What's done is done, and we're like 2 years from that season anyway. But in the future, I would like to see that handled differently, so I think we need to have some sort of procedure or protocol on how that works, and parents need to be aware of how that works.
I concur, and again, we've had some conversations here with Ms. Wynn and Catherine and myself, and we will continue to have them. As the example I gave, and I did that deliberately, that if someone were to pay for their spring sports fee now, they could transfer that to their fall volleyball, transcending those years to it. But that isn't, that's an in-house record-keeping
Right.
matter, and it also then there's a need for the contributor to understand their role in this as well. None of us can read minds about what intents might be, and so the sooner action would take place on that contributor's part when they know it's not being used for what they thought it was, the better it would be for all of us.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Starr, I think you had a question or comment?
From the taxpayer side of things, the dates when they changed became problematic in some cases, because if you wrote a check today for a fee, would that be applied to this year's taxes or last year's? And the question comes up, I've already filed. So, but I want to give you a check today for $200. So where would I apply that? Do I redo my taxes for this year, or can I use that for next year's taxes?
So that is the contributor's choice. If they haven't made a 2021 tax credit contribution, they can write a check today and use it for that. I received a check yesterday from just a good soul up the street in the neighborhood, no kids in the school, and he said, I want this for my 2021 tax credit. It was great. They could also, if they've made the 2021, they can designate it for 2022. That's another little thing. I don't think it's been as widespread as some of like the LLC contributions and other stuff, but we have had people attempt to make multiple contributions for the same year. And if we know it and you catch it, that's easy, but we don't know everybody who sends in a check, and so sometimes someone may have contributed $400 last year, 2021, and now they're paying $400 more, thinking it's 2021 again, and they just can't do that. So the same thing, it can be a donation, but it can't be a tax credit, because you're limited to the 200, 400 realms that on it.
My husband and I do tax credit, but we give it to the dance thing that they have, because it's so nice and wonderful, and you'd want to keep it in this school.
I think Wendy had another comment first. Go ahead.
This isn't adding a bunch to Ms. Wynn's plate. I mean, this is, my worry is now we're starting to get super convoluted of, it's this, hopefully that is very few cases in terms of you have this child who paid, but then for some reason they couldn't do a sport and all of that. I just want to make sure that it's handled in such a way that there's enough players to make sense of it so that it doesn't bog down, the bureaucracy doesn't bog down what needs to happen.
Well, that is a challenge, and it's not just Ms. Wynn, it's Catherine and Val, and the better job we can do of communicating the proper way to do this from the get-go, the better off we'll be. Because as it comes, like the rev track contributions now, Val Fernandez has to pull a report and everything is in there. And then she's got to search through and find those that are, that are, well, but there is a separator of tax credits. So, but then she physically has to put eyes on it and go through and see what's there. Now, we are looking at some other online alternatives for payments for next year, and we think we can probably do better than what we have with RevTrack. But it's a labor-intensive job right now, and that's why I'm saying again, write a check.
Right.
Write a check with a note in the memo of what it's for. It's a lot easier for everybody.
Awesome. Yes, Mrs. Reed. And to your point, Dana, if they do fill out the form, there's a box that they check. So I think that's the other thing, is that we need to encourage people when they are paying in this weird time period between January and April 15th to either use the form, to put it in the memo of their check that you encourage them to write. And then one other question, and again, I don't want to keep opening cans of worms, but I want to be clear. So say Dr. Barnard pays for her son Jake to play basketball.
I did.
I
I did, knowing that he wasn't playing, but I did.
And
I
then
supported
Jake
school.
doesn't play.
I did not, I paid for it knowing he wouldn't play.
Okay, well,
play,
if she
right?
didn't know
This one,
that,
yes.
can it transfer to another child, or once it's that in that child's name, is it a done deal for that child?
No, the contributor can change that to
another child.
whether it's their own or someone
Or
else's.
say,
Good thing I have
put it
three
to
of
the
them.
general fund.
Yes.
The contributor can indicate
Yes.
to
Right.
direct it to any
says
other, they just can't get the
Yes.
money back.
No,
Correct.
All right.
Yep.
let
I
him
think
know that
Yes,
you're
Mr.
saying
Sir.
no.
Just last question, is that public record? Are contributions to tax credits public record?
I don't believe they are.
They are.
Catherine's nodding her head.
She's
they are.
shaking her head, yes.
I think that's important to put out there as well, because some people don't want their names out there for that kind of stuff. They just want it out there, the money out there, without having the name. So it is public record.
Would it only be public, I'm asking you, Ms. King, would it only be public record if someone did a Freedom of Information Act? Like, it's not
Like, we don't-
published
yeah,
somewhere,
we
right?
don't have it
Who
published.
would do that?
So what can happen is at any time, and I don't want to say this in a public meeting, but it is
Here you are.
the law. At any time, anyone can walk into the office, and they have, and request that I go back 10 years and pull out Cindy Lou Who's $10 tax credit that may or may not have been given in elementary school, possibly middle school. They're not sure which class, they don't know which activity, but by the way, would you mind showing me exactly how that money was used? And I have to be able to track it. And so to his joke about the forensic accountant,
That's your job?
but I will say that it is the charter schools that allow you to transfer between siblings. But it is my understanding that in a public school, you are not allowed to transfer between siblings. You can double check on that, but I just want to make sure.
We'll check. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure you
okay.
can.
Please let us know, yeah.
There are parents who will want to know that information.
Yes, we definitely want to know that information. Okay, I think we've gotten a good assessment of
Okay,
that.
but at the end of the day, tax credits are a great thing. I mean, I
Wonderful.
remember about 5 years ago, we had over $300,000 in
Yep.
tax credits. I think we have to encourage everyone. It's you basically telling the government where you want your tax dollars to go. So I think at the end of the day, we need to be really positive about this, even though there are some very strict rules about it.
And if I may, on that subject, every penny we spend on fuel to take a bus to Prescott for the championship game is a penny we don't have in our M&O budget to pay salaries, which we're getting to next. And that fuel is, because it's for an extracurricular activity, is eligible to be paid for out of tax credit monies. So coaching addendum, stipends, transportation costs, all of those things, we owe it to our community to do everything we can to raise as much tax credit money as we can so we can pay for all of that stuff out of tax credit and have every penny that comes to us through state funding in our M&O budget to go towards operating our schools, keeping the lights on, and paying our staff.
Perfect. Well said.
One last question. Yeah, I was around when they first put this together, and at the same time, there was another tax credit that individuals can contribute to. It's not for public schools, it's for kind of in a roundabout way, private schools. And that gets a lot of publicity these days. So I want to make sure that people understand what they're contributing to and what they're maybe also contributing to for reasons they have. And that's where I go back, I'm thinking backwards now, and at my new age, it's hard to do. But it was really confusing then, and it's more confusing now because the numbers are always out in the legislature, and it comes up every year whether or not they're going to expand the use of those tax credits. I think we have to be very specific in saying that the only ones that this district can take are the $200 and $400 tax credits. The others are for something outside of our district. They're certainly welcome to any taxpayer that wants to, but that's why I bring up the question about public records, because that is oftentimes requested to see who is funding which school and how that money is being distributed from the organization that you make the tax credit to. And it's complicated, and it's meant to be so. So I just think that if you can keep your article in the Falcon Focus down to 3 or 4 pages, that would probably help.
Just send out that tax form.
All right, thank you very much for that update and answering all our questions about the tax credit. It has been a bit of a thorny topic, and we appreciate some of the clarity that you've been able to provide us this evening. The next information and discussion item is review of professional staff contract. We did receive that as an addendum. Yes, Dr. Sweeney.
Yes, Madam President, members of the governing board and guests, we're not going to physically look at what a contract is going to look like tonight, but I'm going to talk about what's going to be in it. And after I speak to this a little bit, TJ is here, and I think he has a couple comments he might like to make as well. But this item concerns contracts that we will issue to our certified teachers, which we intend to do upon return from spring break. As part of the meet and confer process, compensation was the major focus. You looked at the language changes in the agreement, that was a focus as well. But compensation is at the end of the day, the main thing. You've been provided a copy of the draft of the proposed salary schedule, and that's what I would like to discuss. And that is on, in your addendum, it's the one that looks like this with the 2 tables. As stated on the document, this salary schedule serves to reset our current teachers giving credit for years of service in FHUSD and educational attainment levels. It will also be used for determining salaries for new hires for the upcoming school year. It is not a guarantee of future earnings, as we are dependent on funding from the state to determine what our compensation capacity will be in the future. This need for a reset probably sounds familiar to those of you who have been around for a few years. That is because we did a similar thing back in 2018. And this reset of 2022 addresses the same issue that was addressed then. And I'm going to make a prediction in 2025 or 26, you're going to be doing this again. What is just the natural occurrence that happens is that typically people that come in last year came in at a higher level than people who came in 3 years ago. And that's just the changes that occur in the salary structure and other things. So that's what we're addressing here, is that people who have been in the district a number of years typically have fallen behind those that have come in later. And there's quite a discrepancy between where people are at with the same levels of experience and the same levels of education. So the effect of using this schedule to move current teachers is that the lowest raise any teacher will get is 2.5% of their current salary. And of note, when we started conversations as part of the meet and confer process, we were talking about 2.5% across the board. And we were able to move from that considerably for a number of reasons. But there are 11 teachers in this group that will be receiving a 2.5% increase over their current salary. Those 11 with that 2.5% increase are still above where someone else is with the same level of experience and the same educational level. Just a little bit. It really closes the gap. So nobody's going backwards. Everybody's getting at least that 2.5%. Of another group of 50 teachers, increases go from 3% and up, and they range all over the place in there. When I say up, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9% to get caught up. As a result of this stratified approach to the reset, we'll have a much more consistent means to determine compensation, and we have a much more tighter variation between people with similar backgrounds, similar history, similar experience, and similar education levels. The bottom section of the schedule uses the same base salary levels from what are above in year one. And the group, and TJ in particular, wanted us to work on presenting a schedule that shows a truer reflection of compensation. This year, the Prop 301 money is $6,800.6815, and that is money available to all teachers. Now, there's a performance pay piece in there. Typically, most teachers earn that part, but that $6,815 is available to every teacher in the district. So the purpose of that second schedule, we took added 2% to the base every year, but the $6,815 stayed constant. And again, it was part of the goal of the board was to attract and retain good qualified teachers. And we think this presentation can serve to attract people and get their interest more when they see the actual bottom line contribution above the base salary. Now, you know, the text underneath the heading in that second table is something I want to repeat here, is that the Prop 301 monies fluctuate, and they fluctuate based on revenues that the state has and what they allocate to schools to do it. So this is a snapshot in time at the moment of this is what a teacher in our district would be making at these levels if they qualify for the Prop 301 monies. We don't know yet what the 301 monies are for next year. The talk has been it's going to be a little bit lower. We don't know that. But the top part of this schedule, I like to say it has a shelf life of 1 year. It will adjust our current teachers now, and it will serve as a means to place incoming teachers for this upcoming year. Depending on what happens with state funding, we may or may not be able to continue a 2% increase all the way around. The bottom part with the 301 monies is really, that will, when we know what the 301 monies are for 22-23, we will go in and change this immediately. So its shelf life is probably about 60 days. But you get the idea of it, and I think it was a great idea that TJ put forth that we have something like this so we can better represent to people who might be looking that this is, bottom line, this is what you're eligible to earn here in Fountain Hills. So I understand that is a lot to digest in a short period of time. And after TJ, you want to make a few comments, then afterwards, if you have any questions between us, we'll be glad to answer.
Can I ask a quick, super easy
Yes.
clarifying question? The 301 money doesn't actually, it's not distributed evenly throughout the year. It is a bonus.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
It's true.
Quick question, there's no retroactivity in this?
No, this is 22-23.
Yeah, so we really, as you saw the survey at the work session, we had 53 responders to our survey. 100% said salary schedule. You know, we talked a lot about in the last segment of this meeting with making sure we have that transparency when it comes to our tax credit donations. And our teachers wanted more transparency on our money and how things looked. And I know one of the things that we looked at was, where we were currently and then where this would put us. And the team consistently was discouraged by the discrepancy going into this year. And so that's one, that was a main piece, sticking piece to this, where we do have some not necessarily unhappiness, but like some harder conversations with teachers are that this schedule ends at 10 years. And we do have people living in the district, for I believe it's 16 people that are above where this schedule would be. And they still saw increases, and most of them actually saw increases of over 2.5%. But we're a little discouraged that, like, for example, I'm on like a step 10, and somebody in their 16th year here is on a step 10. So it's like, hey, don't necessarily know that would be, but we did the best we could. Overall, we think this is a really good effort on adding the $6,800 there. I think of when we're deciding where we're going to work as teachers, we have so many districts within driving distance that it's really, when you're looking at all these different websites, you look at the salary schedule and you think, okay, is this even worth me applying? And I know that one of the narratives that we've had is that we are $10,000 below where other districts are. And I can tell you firmly that when you add that $6,800 in, that puts our starting salary at about $45,900. That's competitive with Mesa, that's competitive with Scottsdale. Like, they start in that same spot. The 2% increase is similar to what you'll see in neighboring districts. We don't accept all previous years, like Mesa would, but Mesa gives you $500 per year. We give you 2% per year. So yes, we end earlier than they do. We're giving you more per year than they do. And so I thought as a teacher, I've worked in other districts around here, and I thought, if I have friends in other districts, what are some key points that we need to hit in order for me to go to those friends and say, hey, you want a new place to work? Let's give you competitive salary, small class sizes, and the working conditions that we work for. And then keeping that collaboration and that strong teacher voice. And really, I think we're in a much different place going into 22, 23 than we were coming into 21, 22. So.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr.
So your
Starr.
comparatives from those other districts, they advertise their schedule with the $6,800 in it, and we
Many
weren't,
do.
and we weren't,
And we weren't.
really.
And so that's why I was like, well, if it's a simple matter of they're advertising 6,800 and we're not, well, then advertise the 6,800. Let's go.
Makes
Stop
sense,
it.
yeah.
That way we didn't have to do, because like up until now, like we had this kind of salary schedule where you'd have to like, okay, you start here, now do this algebra problem to figure out where you're going to end up. And we thought that was a good idea.
And you're in English, so that's
Right, exactly. I call my wife, the math teacher, and be like, can you tell me what my contract's going to be the next year?
Carpooling, maybe you can offer carpooling and there you go. That'd save on gas.
And to that point, I mean, I feel like even with the insurance costs going down for next year, then you have more in your check each and every time. And I would hope that when a new teacher is being recruited, they would see line by line between, taxes being taken out, and everyone has their money taken out for AR, whatever.
ARS.
Thank you. And, I think letting them know what that looks like when they retire, and all of these pieces that I think do get lost when you're like, I'm just trying to pay this bill and this bill and this bill, that I think, are selling points, for someone that might be taking what they deem to be a less paying job.
And a couple other things to add on that. Alex Means and I have had some conversations about how this does change onboarding conversations. Because now rather than, okay, you're gonna see this number, now let me tell you how this number's gonna get bigger. It's a little bit of, okay, you see this number, now here's the part that, and that's why I like having kind of the both there, because you can say, this will be on your regular check. Here's what, here's what your June's gonna look like, and June's gonna be really nice. And then, just another thing as far as, where this kind of puts some of our teachers on average, it is a $2,885 increase. So when you take all of them and you put all of them together, you average it out, and so with losing the PBIS stipend, on average, our staff has gained that back, and we've gained that back in our salary. So like we're gaining that back consistently rather than
Each
a
paycheck,
December and a May bonus.
Yeah.
So.
Very exciting. Glad we're able to crunch the numbers in the right direction.
I would like to add another comment since TJ brought up small class sizes, and this is 100% unrelated to the salary schedule, but I think it's a point we need to get out there. Because of the commitment of this board and the conversations we've had in-house here about what we can and can't do, there were this year a second and third grade position that were allocated but were not filled. And the numbers, I always say there's good numbers and bad numbers, and the numbers it's a bad number because it's like a little too big for 3 sections, but it's gonna be small for 4. But we made the decision, we're going 4 sections at each of those places for next year, so Kevin's gonna be able to hire for those positions. So when we're promoting the district, they're gonna be looking at, unless there's a big influx, they're gonna be looking at 20, 21 kids in those, maybe 19, 20. And so that is something we can promote, that we have a competitive salary and the working environments are going to be good. For those class sizes, in particular at McDowell Mountain next year, those are going to be very good class sizes, and I think that will contribute to more productivity from teachers, better environment, behavior-wise, and just overall school culture. So, and that's, thanks to the board for supporting, putting our staffing where we think it's needed.
Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Starr.
So the incentives and so forth that are in that 301 money, I'm looking at it from the CTE standpoint and certificates of completion or even passing a test to get certified in some form or another. I don't know. I haven't been around enough here recently to know how many of those are available. But in my case at EVIT, dual enrollment, because the colleges pay half of what the tuition is back to the school. I'm wondering if there aren't others that we haven't talked about yet. I just don't know that there are other incentives that come to teachers who have students who are dual enrolled or have students who get certificates of completion, if nothing else, that they get credit for.
Yeah, I'm not certain of the answer to that, but it's something we can look at. I do think, having a good look at dual enrollment possibilities is something we need to look at for the future here.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. That was our last information discussion item.
There actually is one more.
Oh, is there? I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. So, again, we're not going to show you the contract for the support staff, but I would like to speak to what's in that. Just like the certified group, compensation was a major focus for the support staff meet and confer team. And the first important item I want to be sure that you and the public all understand is we currently have 25 employees who are making less than $15 an hour. And a priority from the meet and confer group was that we raise that level at least to $15 an hour. So we are doing that. And that's 25 employees who will be seeing anywhere from 10%, 12% raise based on what they're currently making. That was the first priority, and then for other support staff, everyone will receive a 2.5% increase on their current salaries. And one of the things we spent some time on, and that I'm pretty pleased to see, is the longevity incentive. And you may have noticed in the meet and confer agreement, there's some stuff X'd out and some new stuff put in. But TJ mentioned having to do algebra to figure out what you're going to get with 301 money. I literally had to do algebra to figure out what people were going to get in longevity incentives in the classified side support staff. And the way it was set up before, if you did your algebra properly, we had longevity incentives that ranged from $880 at the most to $27.50 at the least. And the $27.50, is almost, it makes you scratch your head. So what we have done is we have included language in there that the longevity incentive for support staff is $100 per year of service here in FHUSD. So that will change that range for next year from $100 to $2,800. The other thing that it accomplishes is we weren't able to address all of the same issues related to reset on the support side, like on the classified side. There are several cases we were able to bring people up with significant years of experience to the point of a relatively newly hired person. But if you've been here 16 years and you're now making the same as what the person who started last year is making, it might not leave you feeling the best. So our belief is the longevity incentive adjusts that a bit, so that person with 16 years is now going to make $1,600 more. The other part of the longevity incentive is the wishes of the group, and I support, is that is not an end of the year thing. It is calculated out and distributed throughout the year in their regular pay. So that's the main part of that, is bringing that group of 25 employees up to a $15 an hour wage, and then 2.5% across the board for everybody else, and then a longevity incentive based on $100 per year here in Fountain Hills. So if you have any questions about that, I'd be glad to answer them.
I don't have any questions. I'll just make a comment though. I really appreciate all the work that you've done with the meet and confer committees, that we really do want our staff to make the most possible. Unfortunately, state funding always doesn't give us that ability, but I'm really proud of our district that for the past few years, our teachers have continually gotten raises. And today, or a few days ago, Phoenix, school district announced that 171 of their teachers may be looking at a $5,000 decrease because their grant expired. But I hope that teachers work here feel that they are appreciated, because they really are, and we really are trying. And so I appreciate all the work that Meet and Confer and Superintendent Sweeney has done. So thank you so much.
I agree.
Well said.
Yes.
Call me crazy, but I like it.
You must. You came out of retirement for it.
Okay, that really is our last topic under information and discussion items. So if you have an item that you would like to see on a future board agenda, please contact Krista. Dates of upcoming meetings: we have on Wednesday, March 23rd, a work study session at 5 p.m. here in the Learning Center, and then the meeting after that will be Wednesday, April 13th. That is a business meeting beginning at 6:30 p.m. And with that, I move that we adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
You want to stay, Dana?
Happy
Great way
birthday,
to celebrate
Dana.
your
Happy
birthday.
Nadia.
I'll send you an email.
Here, I have one more to add to that.
Oh, go ahead. I just wanted to say, what happens at that work study session, what I do. I've been making cookies.
I know.
I've been making cookies, girl. I'm like, do you think this building is on fire? Okay, I kept looking around. Something has to be on fire outside. Yes. Because I thought something was on fire. I'm like, okay, what do we have to grab to leave this building?